Good morning. Welcome to 9 o'clock church. So we said last week we're going to talk more about the prayers of Nehemiah, and there were many. If you look at the book of Nehemiah, it's a short book. Oh my goodness, is it short. I'd say a third of it is ate up with just lists of names. These are the people that did this. Here's all of the census records. Here's all the people that did that, people with me who built this, and you take those away, you've got a much shorter book. And then in all of this, he has about 9 prayers in this little bitty book. And the rest is pretty much narrative of what's going on over there in Jerusalem. I wanted to go through his prayers today, and I want to kind of bear down on one particular prayer. He prays first in chapter 1, verses 4 through 11. And when he prays that, he has just received the bad news of God. And he says, God, I recognize your holiness. I'm asking for a hearing. I need to first confess my sins, and then God, I need you to help me when I approach the king. And the result was, when he got to the king was there ready to do his bidding and to help Nehemiah out. Second prayer happens in chapter 2, verse 4. It's during his conversation with the king. Very quickly, very shortly, he says, and I asked of the Lord for help. He just needed to express himself before the king and do it in such a way where he wasn't going to lose his life, and he was going to be successful in rebuilding the wall. The next one is in chapter 4, and we're going to circle back to this one in a minute, but it's in chapter 4, verses 4 through 5, where he basically says, God, these people are despising you. I know you're a good God. I know you're forgiving, but don't forgive these guys. They're keeping us from doing your work. And then there's chapter 4, verse 9, where it's after the threats of the enemies, the attack that they're going to have. He says, God, I'm just putting everything in your hands. I can't do it. You can do it. And if I try to do it, it's going to fail. I need your power. I need to trust you. And so he did. He trusted God. He took the necessary precautions, and things happened the way they should have happened. And then he gets into Nehemiah chapter 6. And there he starts responding to some of the threats that have been brought to him. But he doesn't respond in his own power and his own strength. Instead, he turns to God and he says, God, here's what these folks are doing. Please handle it for us. And God does. The last 3 prayers are pretty much just exactly what you would think. I guess the last 4 prayers. Chapter 13, verse 29, he's reflecting on the actions of the enemies, and he's asking for God's help. And then you get to these 3 are early, but chapter 5, verse 19, again, chapter 13, verse 14, again in chapter 14, verses 22, and in 31. In all of those, he's reflecting in God's goodness, and he's saying, God, after all this is done, please remember me. I was faithful. I did your work. I completed the task. Really, this kept his motivations clear. It kept him humble, kept him focused on God, and he knew where the power came from. Now let's go back to chapter 4. In chapter 4, he says, God, these people here are despising you. They're mocking you. And what they're doing is horrible. And they're doing their best to keep us from fulfilling your will. Now, of all the things you're going to do, please do not forgive them. Now, isn't that a weird prayer? We're not used to that. We're used to, God, be good to these folks, bless these people, kumbaya, but every once in a while, especially in the Psalms, you come across imprecatory prayers. People pronounce it different ways, which is, God, there's something that needs to be done. Somebody needs to be held accountable for. Justice has to be served. And that's the prayer that's going on right now. Nehemiah is saying, God, fight for me, stand before me, keep these people away from me. And then the very next verse he says, and we went back to work on the wall. I want you to see something here. There's 2 teams. There's the team fighting against God, and there's the team that is doing God's will. Understand, the opposite of fighting against God is not fighting for God. The opposite of fighting against God is doing God's will. Not focused on those who are going to do harm, or who are going to mock God, or besmirch his name, or do anything else. It is fighting for those things that are good. But both of those teams had a purpose, they had leaders, and they were going to follow them. So years ago, I used to work in kitchens, some pretty nice kitchens, which, by the way, last night I took one of my real estate clients out to dinner. Went to a brand new restaurant I've never been to before. It's been here for years. I just didn't know about it. It's called Isle of Capri. It's in the Holiday Inn, north end of Virginia Beach. If you haven't been, save up your shekels. It's a little pricey. Save up your shekels, go there. It is beautiful views, wonderful food, great staff, very attentive. If you think Orion's Roof is great, yeah, well, it is. But Isle of Capri is actually better, and it's been here for years. So I worked in some fancy kitchens, and we only had 3 rules. One is, no mistakes go out the door. In other words, if it's wrong, you don't send it. Number 2, you don't get to eat your mistakes. You can see why. Every night somebody would be overcooking a porterhouse, and then where would you be? You'd be without another steak. And the cost and all that stuff, right? And number 3, we work as a team. In fact, our expediter, the guy who managed the kitchen, he'd say, we hum. We work as a team. We had several stations. My first day, and this would be at Disney. I worked at Disney for a while. Got to serve Mickey Mouse. The first day on the job, nobody knew me. And so they didn't know my skill level, didn't know what I could do. The second easiest job in the kitchen was the cold side. And I mean, it was easy. The cold side, you made peanut butter jelly sandwiches, you made ham and cheese sandwiches, and then you put pickles as garnish, and then you handed meat to the guy behind you who was working the grill. The grill was probably the most important section of the entire kitchen. You had the hot side. The hot side, you had these half-size hotel pans that are about 4 to 6 inches deep, and there was quarter chickens, half chickens, spaghetti, sauce, meatballs. I can't remember everything. It was about 8 to 10 different half hotel pans that were put in there. They were cooked behind you, and this guy's job was just to assemble everything that was cooked. Over his shoulder was the fryer. We had a guy, Robert, was our fryer, and he had come to us from Kentucky Fried Chicken at the time, now KFC. We called him Fryer Bob. Everybody had a nickname, and you never got to pick your own nickname, and it was always some sort of pejorative. I don't know. I got Hacksaw. I have no idea how I earned the name Hacksaw, but somehow that's an insult because all of the nicknames are insults. Ralph was up there at the expediting, and he could fly. Everything he would call up in tickets, he'd pull it up off the board, he'd put a cover on it, set it on, garnish it, put it on the tray, call out the name of the waiter. Hey Tony, your stuff's ready, and it's gone. And we really did work. So I started off on the cold side. The very first night, the guy on the grill said, I need to take a smoke break. He's out the door. So Ralph looks around and goes, where's my grill guy? I said, I got it covered. What do you need? He had no idea that I'd run a grill at a restaurant prior. So he calls out the order. I get it up there. For about 15 minutes, I'm running both sides, cold side and the grill. The guy comes back from his break. Ralph goes, where you been? I goes, I took a break. He goes, take another break. Go wash dishes. And Ralph soon discovered he could cut down costs if he used me on both stations all the time. And that happened for the rest of my time there at Disney. One night, we get a call, and my station was closest to the phone. Pick up the phone. It's the manager, the guy who runs the whole kitchen. He calls us. His name is Scott. Scott says, Hacksaw, send me down a waiter. Which one? Any waiter. Okay. So I get a guy, one of the waiters, send him down. He gets down there and Scott says, I want to order a soft drink. Okay. He says, write me a ticket for it. So he writes him a ticket. Goes up and says, here's the $2. Now, this has been 40 years ago, right? And soft drinks at Disney cost $2 40 years ago. I can't imagine what they cost now. Gives him the $2. He goes up, he gets the soft drink, he brings it back, he Scott pays the ticket. He goes, go get me a fresh run from the till. So he goes back up, punches in the Coke, gets him a fresh ticket from the till, one of those big long strips of paper. He comes down, starts filling out the paperwork. Phone rings again. He goes, send down Ralph. Ralph's the expediter. He comes down. What's going on, Scott? He goes, well, until I ordered a Coke, we had matched our old record, but we have now beat our record by one. He said, go commemorate it. And this is after I'd been there like a year or so. I had no idea that this was one of their traditions. He comes up to the kitchen. He goes, Chuck, Tom, come to the elevator. Tom knew what was going on. I did not. We get in the elevator. We get halfway down. Ralph hits the emergency button. Between the two of them, they pry open the doors. And on the concrete wall in front of us are all of these names and numbers and dates and stuff. And it looks like somebody's just opened up a ruined hieroglyphs or something. And so he writes in there our new record and the date, and all three of us sign it. And we had done I can't remember the exact number, but it was just over 1,400 covers. We call it, when we put the cloche on top of the plate, we call that a cover. We had done over 1,400 covers that night, and we had broken the record. And so all three of us got to sign that wall. Hit the emergency button again, the door shut, we go down. He lets Scott know it's taken care of. We go back up, we finish cleaning up. But he said, that's what happens when we hum. That's what happens when we are a well-oiled machine, when we are a team and we get things accomplished. Now, bring that around to 9 o'clock church. We're going to have a team by September 25th. We're going to have a team prior to that. I'd kind of like to meet some of you in person. And if you'd like to meet me, this is how I want you to get a hold of me. If you scroll down the page here, you're going to see where there are prayer requests. Fill in the fields there. Just say, I'm in, or I want to meet. And we'll pick a date sometime in the next month or so. Let me put it like this. Let's pick a date once we have between 10 and 15 people to say, I'm in. And if you say, I'm in, I'll correspond with you. Say, I'm in, and then we will meet. There's a restaurant right in Lansdowne called the Casual Pint. Already got permission to meet there. If you say I'm in, I'll let you know the date when I have between 10 and 15 people. And as a team, we'll get together and figure out what we need to do next for 9 o'clock church. Remember, there's always two teams. There's the team that's fighting against God, and there's the team that is working for the will of God. I need people on that team. Pray for me. Pray for our church. Join our team. See you next week.